Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
The Egyptian opposition continues to denounce President Hosni Mubarak's regime, calling for boycotting the vote on the constitutional amendment. The opposition said the government ignores the people's will for constitutional and political reforms that would allow for a real dialogue within the government. The leaders of the three main opposition parties and the Muslim Brotherhood are calling on the Egyptian people to boycott the referendum scheduled for May 25th.
The leaders of the three largest opposition parties in Egypt held a press conference. Their statement was not directed to the Egyptian public, despite the fact that part of their announcement was directed to the people, especially amidst doubts that citizens would even respond to it. But it was directed to the authorities, highlighting the extent of the conflict between the opposition and the government, revealing the level to which it has reached.
The three parties declared that they will boycott the referendum on the constitutional amendment to Article 76, scheduled for May 25, 2005, and call on the Egyptian people to boycott this vote and stay at home on that day.
This was the expected reaction, as the opposition continued to accuse the government of emptying Article 76 of the Constitution for changing the method of electing a president to become a multi-candidate election. They insist on their conditions to nominate candidates, restricting the process as described by the opposition and independents, thus leaving the ruling Democratic Party in control of selecting the rival candidates to President Mubarak. This is a clear position. The proposed amendment gives existing parties a chance to run in the upcoming elections without any conditions. Nevertheless, the parties refuse the issue, reiterating that it will be a cosmetic process, since the opportunities between their candidates and President Mubarak are unequal. For example, monopolizing the media.
We are facing a blatant enemy. We are facing a constitutional decree that will not only lead to stealing power, rather to raping a nation by force. In dealing with raping a nation, we use all methods. We are exerting pressure, hoping that the president will respond by withdrawing this decree and bring it back to the parliament.
This is a call for a boycott and to organize the opposition front, which coincided with ending negotiations with the ruling National Democratic Party. This decision came as an obstacle to the unilateral calls by the ruling party to start a new round of negotiations between the government and the opposition, thus releasing a new statement before the scheduled date with condemnation and accusations against the government because it did not comply with any of the demands that were made during the last round of talks. This protest weakens dialogue in the upcoming negotiations, especially since there is suspicion that the ruling party penetrated some of the opposition parties. Some believe that other parties have a flexible position toward the government.
We encourage the Egyptian people to take the appropriate position, to face these wrong and obscuring measures, to avoid entering another phase of superficiality and mistakes.
These consecutive developments are thought by many to be the logical result and demand that President Mubarak meet the leaders of the opposition parties to resolve these conflicts on the ground. Hani Amara, Abu Dhabi TV, Cairo.
The spiritual leader of the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood, Muhammad Mahdi Akif, announced that the movement will boycott the upcoming referendum. In an interview with Abu Dhabi television, he confirmed that amending Constitutional Article 76 has disappointed the Egyptian people.
We wanted to go to the election booths and say no, but regrettably the government's authoritative measures and the illegitimate elections are useless. God willing, we will join forces with the rest of the political parties and will not participate in the referendum.
After his arrival to a hearing at the U.S. Senate in Washington, British Parliament member George Galloway criticized the Bush administration strongly, stating that he does not accept any justice coming out of the U.S. committee due to the overwhelming majority of its neoconservative members. In other developments, Carl Levin, a Democratic senator, accused the American administration of corruption regarding the oil for food program by allowing the smuggling of oil in Iraq at the beginning of 2003.
With lots of divisions among members of Congress, several sessions have been held where disagreeing parties tried to hammer out issues which in turn made the burden of the Iraqi war even bigger. Today's session by United States Senate Subcommittee claimed that British Parliament member George Galloway has received allocations from the Oil for Food program worth 20 million barrels of oil from 2000 to 2003. Galloway is testifying that the economic sanctions imposed against Iraq have worsened the situation there for years before the war.
This is the mother of all smokescreens. You are trying to divert attention from the crimes that you supported, from the theft of billions of dollars of Iraq's wealth. Have a look at the real oil for food scandal. Have a look at the 14 months you were in charge of Baghdad, the first 14 months, when $8.8 billion of Iraq's wealth went missing on your watch.
The subcommittee chairman, Republican Norm Coleman, alleged that some Russian and French politicians have been engaged in corruption and bribery schemes. The chairman also accused Galloway of receiving kickbacks and bribes. There were allegations of corruption by some Russian politicians. However, the Russian government accuses the American administration of manufacturing allegations against the Russians in order to undermine the credibility of the United Nations and the countries that participated in the Oil for Food program. A former French minister who was accused by the Americans of corruption and bribery confirmed that the United States allegation is part of a conspiracy against some of those who opposed the war in Iraq. The United States allegations also listed other figures such as the United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan, the Russian president and the French president. George Galloway, a British Parliament member who opposed the sanctions and the war against Iraq, said that he decided to come to the United States mainly to confront the United States Congress personally regarding the allegations against him by the investigation committee, not to testify as a witness in front of the United States committee. Galloway stated that due to the overwhelming majority of the neoconservatives in the Congress and the Christian fundamentalists and the pro-Zionists of the American administration, justice will not prevail in such a hearing. In his defense against the allocation of funds from the Oil for Food program and receiving kickbacks from the former Iraqi regime, Galloway refuted these allegations and accused the United States of trying to divert attention from the failure of the Iraqi war and the grand theft of billions of dollars from the Iraqi national resources, not to mention the human loss of more than 100,000 Iraqis. On the eve of the hearing, Carl Levin, the Democratic senator and a member of the investigation committee, pointed out other findings which charged the United States Treasury Department of lagging behind in tracking down the sum of $37 billion of kickbacks from the Oil for Food program. Senator Levin further confirmed that the suggestions of imposing yet new sanctions against other countries will result in the pain and suffering of the people of these countries and will open the opportunity of greed to others. Syrian Television, Zuhair Imadi, Washington.
Protests in the Muslim world over Newsweek's report on the desecration of the Quran continue despite retraction by the magazine of the report. Muslim students protested outside the U.S. Embassy in Indonesia's capital, Jakarta, denouncing the desecration of the Quran at Guantanamo Bay. The report has sparked protests across the Muslim world, from Afghanistan, where 16 were killed, to Pakistan, India, Gaza, and in Indonesia. On Sunday, the magazine said the report might not be true. Meanwhile, the Secretary General of the World Muslim League, Abdullah bin Abdul Muhsin al-Turki, said in Rome the League demands an inquiry into the report by Newsweek magazine suggesting that the Quran was desecrated. The World Muslim League, based in the holy city of Mecca, has called for a speedy investigation. Afghan authorities suspect criminals, not militants, kidnapped an Italian woman and workers snatched from her car on a street in the center of the capital, Kabul. More than 200 Afghan widows demanded the release of 32-year-old Clementina Cantoni, who works for the CARE International Aid Agency. Cantoni was kidnapped yesterday after her vehicle was intercepted and blocked by another car. Security officials said 4 gunmen grabbed her from her car, bundled her into a car and drove away. The kidnapping has raised fears among Kabul's foreign community that anti-government insurgents might begin Iraq-style kidnappings, but a spokesman for Taliban insurgents denied involvement. At her family's home in the northern Italian city of Milan, Cantoni's mother was evacuated to a hospital shortly after hearing the news. Iranian Foreign Minister Kamal Kharazi has said that his country will help in the development of Iraq. He spoke during a visit to Baghdad, the first by a senior Iranian official to the country since the fall of Saddam Hussein 2 years ago. Meanwhile, and 3 weeks after the election of the new Iraqi government, guerrilla attacks continue. Interior Ministry employee General Fadl al-Zuhairi was assassinated in the town of Baquba by unknown gunmen. He is the 4th Iraqi to be assassinated in one day. A family member said Zuhairi he was shot dead by masked men when he was trying to fix his car at a local garage. Earlier in the day, insurgents assassinated 3 clerics, 2 Shiites and 1 Sunni in Baghdad, stoking fears that escalating violence could spill over into civil war. Al-Qaeda's wing in Iraq also warned the country's Sunni Arabs to take no part in drafting a new constitution. In another assassination in Baghdad, guerrillas killed an engineer working for the Commission on Public Integrity. The U.S. military said one of its soldiers was killed and another injured when their patrol was hit by a roadside bomb near Tikrit, north of Baghdad. Thousands of Jewish alternationalists have paralyzed traffic in Israel in the biggest protest yet seen against a planned withdrawal from settlements in the Gaza Strip. Settlers and their supporters have vowed to bring Israel to a halt in the run-up to the withdrawals planned for mid-August. Police arrested dozens of protesters in southern Israel. Preparations are underway to temporarily accommodate settlers to be evacuated from Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon visited these sites where the settlers will be relocated. Heavy machinery was in place to flatten land to prepare the infrastructure used for mobile homes for the settlers, who will be uprooted in line with Sharon's disengagement plan. Sharon plans to evacuate some 9,000 settlers from 21 settlements in the Gaza Strip and 4 in the West Bank. A contractor at is construction site said his company had a contract to build residential units within 90 days. The Israeli government voted to budget $200,000 to $500,000 per settler family to coax most Jewish settlers to leave voluntarily and avoid clashes with soldiers. The Palestinian Authority has warned that continued Israeli settlement policies and failure to meet obligations under mutual agreements would undermine Palestinian efforts to bring about calm. Prime Minister Ahmed Qurayt told foreign envoys Israel had failed to deliver on understandings reached in the Egyptian resort of Sharm el-Sheikh, including a pledge to release Palestinian prisoners as it persisted with construction of the West Bank wall and expansion of Jewish settlements. In the West Bank city of Jericho, Palestinian Interior Minister Nasser Youssef met U.S. envoy William Ward in a first of a series of meetings to discuss the security apparatus in Palestinian areas. Ward noted that James Wolfenson Quartet's envoy would arrive in the region in 3 weeks to head a team responsible for the Palestinian security following Israel's pullout from the Gaza Strip this summer. The U.S. envoy said he was encouraged by the plan put forth by the Interior Minister for the reconstruction of the security forces and the progress made by the Palestinian leadership.
The Israeli occupation authorities decided to put 6 Palestinian villages on the outskirts of Bethlehem behind the apartheid wall. Additionally, they will confiscate thousands of hectares of Palestinian land, thus imposing more restrictions on the Palestinians.
As part of their occupying plans, the Israeli forces released a military order calling for putting 6 Palestinian villages in the western suburbs of Bethlehem behind the apartheid wall, which will separate thousands of residents from their land. Based on this decision, 4,500 dunams of land will be confiscated, in addition to what has already been confiscated for the settlement posts and for the construction of roads.
The purpose is to build an apartheid wall. There are approximately 15 to 20,000 Palestinians who live in this area. Israel does not want Palestinians living behind this wall to become part of Israel, because they will create a demographic burden in the future.
Wad Fukin is one of the villages that will have to comply with this decision, but for decades it has been surrounded by settlements. The new vision for the village is an electric fence that will prevent entry and exit, except through guarded gates and with the permission of gatekeepers, who of course will be Israelis. The second phase is building underground tunnels connecting Wad Fukin to other villages until they reach Bethlehem.
The Wad Fukin village is already surrounded by 4 settlements in the north, south, east, and the west. We are in a death zone. We are the walking dead, and they are suffocating us little by little.
More than 21,000 citizens will face a new catastrophe if these plans are implemented in the coming months. If you were Palestinian, then you would have to travel underground in dark tunnels, and when you came out, you wouldn't see the light because you would be surrounded by an apartheid and expansionist wall. So why would you be surprised? Isn't this the American and Israeli vision for a Palestinian state? Kadir Shaheen, Al-Alam TV, Occupy Jerusalem.
Saad-Din Rafiq al-Hariri predicted the opposition will win in a landslide in parliamentary elections later this month. In an interview with AFP, Saad, whose father, the late premier, was assassinated in a bomb blast that gave birth to a large unified opposition, pledged a quote, white revolution against the police state which governed Lebanon during 15 years. A short while ago, Hariri met British Ambassador James Watt, who said London sees the unity of the Lebanese and respect for all communities as essential to the country's future success. The ambassador also said no community should feel its vital interests to be at risk if there is a common program of national reform and progress. He pledged the UK's support for such a program. Sarah Khoury has more.
Saad-Din Hariri said the opposition will win between 80 and 90 seats in the 128-member parliament in the elections due to kick-off on May 29th. Hariri announced on Sunday a list of 19 candidates for Beirut's 3 multi-member constituencies, which will be the first to go to the polls in Lebanon's phased elections. 10 of them are Christians and the rest Muslims, and they include a number of unlikely political alliances between former armed foes from Lebanon's 1975 to 1990 civil war. Hariri's list includes Solange Meyer, widow of slain president and Christian warlord Bashir Jmeil, the only candidate for Beirut's Maronite Christian seat, and Shiite movement Hezbollah, Amin Shari, for one of the 2 Shiite seats. Hariri told the AFP the opposition is not divided, in reference to recent differences among the desperate groups over the maintenance of the constituency boundaries adopted for the last elections in 2000. Some Christian leaders have called for the elections to be delayed so that changes can be made to the boundaries, which are seen as unfavorable to the Christians. The head of the powerful Maronite Church, Pardon Israel Butrosfer, says the current electoral law is wrong, as it results in Christian MPs being elected by Muslims. But Hariri said that delaying the elections would have discredited the opposition and led to a political vacuum and a military government. He said he was still trying to broaden the opposition alliance to include former Prime Minister Michel Aoun, who returned home from 15 years of exile earlier this month, following the departure of Syrian troops who drove him out. Hariri stressed he is still negotiating with the Free Patriotic Movement of General Michel Aoun and could cooperate with him in parliament and in the government after the elections. He said the alliance with Solange Meil is in part an alliance with the Free Patriotic Movement. Hariri told AFP, like Aoun's movement, he wants transparency, and they share his determination to fight against corruption and to set up an audit of the state of Lebanon's financial affairs. Lebanon has a colossal public debt that currently stands at around $35 billion, despite repeated pledges to donors to implement reforms. At the weekend, Aoun, who claimed a role in ending the 29-year Syrian troop presence, accused Hariri and other opposition politicians of treason for accepting the existing electoral law. Progressive Socialist leader Druze MP Walid Jumblat announced an alliance Sunday with the now dissolved Lebanese Forces militia of jailed Christian warlord Samir Jaja and chose a KLF activist to run on his electoral list in the Shuf district southeast of Beirut. Hariri pledged to carry on the mantle of political and economic reform launched by his murdered father. He said the economic program could not be achieved because of the obstacles put in place by the pillars of the, quote, police regime. He praised France for its constant support of democracy in Lebanon and said the United States, which he recently visited, was now playing a role in helping the efforts for change. Late Premier Rafik Hariri's assassination on February 14th was the catalyst that prompted Lebanon's Christian and Muslim opposition to unite and secure a Syrian military pullout ahead of this month's polls.
Maronite Patriarch Cardinal Ashallah Boutros renewed his strong backing of the Cornet Chihwan opposition front, which had come under a major campaign of criticism, especially from pro-Syrian Christian officials. After a meeting with Cornet Chihwan members, Sfer strongly rejected the, quote, allegations that have been surfacing, in a clear reference to accusations that some figures had secretly supported adopting the 2000 electoral law, which carved large constituencies as voting districts. Sfer, who had launched a scathing attack against the law and warned of an imbalance in Christian-Muslim representation, urged cooperation among all the Lebanese to cement unity and coexistence. Cornet Chihwan member MP Boutros Harib said the bloc opposed the 2000 law back in smaller voting districts, but stressed international pressure to hold elections on schedule forced the opposition to deal with the existing legislation that will govern the polls. He vowed to press the new parliament to amend the law and address Christian grievances. He said Cornet Chihwan is committed to a united opposition front, including Hariri's future movement and Jumblat. He also warned against the campaign he said remnants of the intelligence services have been spreading to sow discord among the Lebanese, and denied seeking to marginalize General Michel Aoun, who had been critical of some opposition figures for creating electoral alliances with Jumblat and Hariri.
Staunchly pro-Syrian MP and former Interior Minister Sleiman Frangieh lashed out at Hariri's future movement and opposition leader MP Walid Jumblat after talks with Maronite Patriarch Cardinal Nasrallah Boutros in Kirke. Frangieh said he was at the disposal of Sfer and told reporters they were both concerned about the standing of Christians ahead of legislative polls in which Frangieh faces a tough battle after failing to confirm an electoral alliance with ex-Premier and pro-Syrian Omar Karame in the north. Frangieh warned some Christian opposition figures against forging coalition with Hariri and Jumblat and said they should all be on the same part. Christian opposition figures wanted electoral boundaries to be redrawn before the polls, fearing their voices were lost in large majority Muslim districts. Lebanon's political system carefully distributes offices among the various religious minorities who fought a 15-year war that split the country into Christian and Muslim enclaves. Voting takes place in 4 rounds between May 29th and June 19th. The elections come at a time of political turmoil for Lebanon, with Damascus having loosened its political and military yoke of the country since Hariri was murdered in February. 4 electoral lists have been unveiled so far. They are expected to win under the existing electoral law. But Syria's most loyal allies have been struggling to form alliances after Damascus loosened its grip. In Kirke, Frangieh supported the strong criticism that General Michel Aoun leveled against Hariri and Jumblat, saying they were just like the once feared Syrian intelligence chief Rustam Ghazali. Aoun has accused both, along with other Christian opposition figures, of betraying the opposition and said that they never wanted Syria to withdraw from Lebanon, but only opposed Syria's extension of President Milahou's mandate last year, which triggered the UN Security Council's adoption of Resolution 1559. Botaoun, who had opposed Syria's presence, is expected to join electoral alliances with pro-Syrian factions. Saad Eddin Hariri had vowed not to let sectarian rancor affect the unity of the Lebanese. The opposition is hoping to seize control of parliament and break the hold of power on Syria's allies in the elections. They have warned against attempts by Syria's allies to provoke sectarian rhetoric in a bid to derail elections and divide the opposition, which for the first time ever represented Lebanese of all religious sects.
The executive director of Dubai Real Estate International, Mohammed Al-Gargawi, announced that the company will build a huge real estate project in the Moroccan capital of Rabat, with a total cost exceeding $2 billion. Al-Gargawi said that the Amwaj project will provide more than 100,000 job opportunities. It is the largest of its kind in North Africa, reflecting the confidence of Dubai Real Estate International in the Moroccan economy and the huge potential the country has in economic development. He also said that this project comes in the framework of strengthening mutual cooperation between the United Arab Emirates and Morocco.
Breaking ground for the construction of the tallest building in the world, as stated by the builders. Dubai Tower will be a tourist attraction for people who come to Dubai to see and climb the tower.
Dubai Tower is being built in the United Arab Emirates. The tower is initially employing 4,000 workers who are using approximately 100 elevators. It will exceed the height of CN Tower in Toronto, which measures 553 meters in height, and will also exceed the other towers that are being built in New York and Shanghai. The tower designers did not disclose any information on the exact height of the tower, in an attempt to block competitors from building higher towers. Work on the building will be concluded in the year 2008, which will allow more advanced technology to make even higher buildings feasible.
We have reasons to believe that there is some kind of competition in gaining the record of having the highest building in the world. Consequently, we are keeping the real height of the tower top secret. All I can say is that the tower will consist of 160 floors.
The Dubai Tower will contain a hotel, a shopping center, and a residential complex that will include at least 100 luxurious apartments. According to the architects whose headquarters is in Dubai, the tower will measure to at least 800 meters tall. The expenses for building the tower will be approximately $3 billion, and this cost does not include the expenses for the shopping center, the swimming pools, and the smaller towers in its vicinity.
I think we are building a new era for Dubai, and it will be a tourist attraction for everybody who visits Dubai.
A consulting firm based in Chicago designed the tower to conform to Islamic architecture and take the shape of a rose with 6 petals that grow in the desert. It will include a hotel resort at the lower level, and the upper level will include an administration unit and a shopping center. Builders are hoping that the main attraction for tourists will be located on the 124th floor, where a viewing center will be established. Once completed, the tower will be the tallest building that anyone has ever seen in history.
The views expressed on Mosaic are not those of Link TV or its sponsors, but of the broadcasters themselves. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.